Thursday, June 9th, 2016, meeting of the Board of Trustees, Santa Barbara City College. And I'm calling the meeting to order. We have everyone present at the moment except Veronica Gallardo, and I believe Veronica's on her way. Welcome to our audience, not as many as last time, which was really fun when we had all our retirees here. But nevertheless, a wonderful group, and we're happy to have you. We don't have anything to be taken out of order, correct, Lori?
No.
And Angie, do we have any hearing of citizens?
No.
No. So that takes us to 2.6, which is the minutes of the June 9th, no, May 12th meeting, sorry. Can I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Marty moves.
I'll second.
Craig seconds. I have one little change.
Did you find a
Find it.
typo?
No.
I think I found one in there, but
Well, it's kind of,
it wasn't a problem.
kind of, sort of. Under 4.2, Angie, and I should have caught this sooner, where it says, final resolution, motion passes to approve the employment agreement for the new superintendent president, comma, it should be distributed and summarized by President Croninger.
All right.
Because I think that's what we did, and we were approving the actual agreement.
Okay.
So,
Very
with-
astute.
okay, anyone have a problem with that, our motion person?
No,
Marty?
it's fine.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes. Okay. Now we go to the tentative budget, and I think Lindsay has a presentation for us.
Well, I'd like to.
Oh, I'm
introduce it
sorry,
first.
Lori,
Thank you.
please.
This is the tentative budget that the board must approve prior to July 1 in order for us to authorize expenditures, as the legislature is determining our final state budget in concert with the governor. As you know, the adopted final budget is presented to you by the September 15th deadline. This budget that is being presented tonight has gone through our process as outlined in the budget development timeline, of which you received a copy actually several times over the past 6 months. And I need to commend Lindsay, James, and Joe for working with the institution to develop a budget in a particularly uncertain period of time, where our enrollment is declining. It's declining at a level that we cannot necessarily predict. And as a consequence, this is a very strong budget, and one that incorporates all of the elements that we need to ensure effective and excellent academic and educational support programs. So I would ask Lindsay to begin.
Good evening to the Board of Trustees and President Gaskin. As usual, Dr. Gaskin and I are right on the same page. I was going to say that this process of the budget development begins in the Fiscal Services Office in about January, and I start presenting different portions of the budget in March, and I actually counted. This will be my 9th time presenting a portion of the budget, so pretty exciting. As usual, my presentation style is to let you guys ask questions as we go. So some of these slides, there's multiple slides that do go together. I may ask you, hold on, that's on the next slide. But I will stop and ask if there's questions. Feel free to interrupt. There's so many numbers to go over. It is sometimes best just to stop and answer questions at the time rather than go back to them. So, and which button is it? Okay. So our agenda, we're going to go over all aspects of the budget here, so we'll just go right into it. This first slide shows us all of the budget assumptions related to the unrestricted revenues. Okay, this is listed in the budget assumptions document. This is just a way to list it here along with a graphical image of what our revenues are, and you can see each of the types of revenues and the grand total and the reduction. We're going to, in a couple slides, go into the exact variances, but many of them are listed here as assumptions, and then again, they're listed on the variance document. But as Dr. Gaskin pointed out earlier, the very first item at the top there shows that we have built into the revenues a reduction in revenues of 4.3 million related to the 7.3% decline in FTES. And as we were building the budget, that is the number that we stuck to at the time, knowing what we knew. As we get into the very last slide of the presentation, we'll talk about what's coming up in the future with the FTS decline. As you know, we were not provided a COLA from the governor, so there's no COLA included, no growth included. That's a given, considering that we're in a state of decline. We were provided a base allocation increase as of the May revise of 907,000. The EPA, that's Proposition 30. A portion of that, about 20% of that proposition, is expiring December 31st, so that's the middle of our fiscal year. And we are building that into the tentative budget, a reduction of $1.1 million in revenues. We're being conservative there. We are hopeful that in the November ballot it will be reinstated. Okay. Lottery revenue remains flat. We've broken out here the state mandated reimbursements. There's an ongoing portion related to our FTS that'll decline very slightly, but there's also the one-time portion, which will be $1.2 million in 16-17. We're going to see that again when we go into future slides, the difference between what we received this year, which was quite a large amount, compared to this 1.2. That's a portion of this difference we're seeing in the decline of our revenue from 15-16 to 16-17. We do not include a deficit factor in our assumptions. We also do not include any type of estimate of what our state apportionment recalculation or prior year adjustments will be. They do occur every year, but it's impossible to guess what those would be. And we did have a small decrease in our per unit fee for the non-resident tuition, specifically related to the capital outlay fee portion of the per unit charge. And it's very minor. We're not actually expecting the revenues to change at all due to that decrease in the per unit amount. Interest revenue remains flat. That's pretty common year on year. And then there is one more important piece of our revenues for our 16-17 budget, which is not related to the unrestricted general fund. These revenues go into the construction fund and the equipment fund directly, but they're one-time revenues for deferred maintenance and instructional equipment, $2.6 million. Okay? Any questions on the first part, on the revenue assumptions? No? Great. Okay, this information here is also I just wanted to put it up here as a reminder of how our FTES decline, how we've projected at this point in time for the tentative budget, and what stability is. So as a reminder, this year in 15-16, our FTES has declined compared to prior years. We are in a state of stability, meaning the state still provides the same level of revenue as prior years based on our higher FTES. So our revenues are not negatively impacted this year, but next year they will be. And you can't see the colors very well from here, I apologize, but the 13 million in 15, does this have a clicker? There we go, okay. Thank you for trying.
Yeah.
So here, this 13,000, it corresponds with the revenue in 16-17, and so on. The 12,000 goes to the 57 million in the next year, and so on. So it goes diagonal across. The only reason why these last three numbers are exactly the same is because we're saying that we're going to have the same FTES. We're unable to predict that far out at this point in time. But you can see that it's a one-year lag, basically, of what our revenues will be. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. So this is very similar to the previous slide, but it's specific to the expenditures. The assumptions related to expenditures, and again, only on the unrestricted general fund. And it also details some of the variances here. The high-level piece to point out is our total expenditures for 15-16 and 16-17 are very similar, 95 million. We'll go into some more details on the upcoming slides, but Again, COLA is not included because there isn't a COLA. We have made some adjustments also related to the FTS decline, adjunct salaries. We have to decline that to cover the decline in the revenues. So that's about a $1 million amount that's lower than the 15-16 budget. We also have a hourly budget decrease of $400,000 related to that 7% decline. And we have CalSTRS and CalPERS, those costs continuing to rise. We do have a slide on that near the end, so we'll refresh everyone's memory about the STRS and PERS increases. But that's a large hit to our employee benefits section. You see that going up from 16 million to 17 million. That's pretty much all CalSTRS and PERS. Minor increase on health benefits. We're very lucky in that area. And we've also done some other reductions of $358,000 to help with our declining enrollment and declining revenues. Any questions on that? No? Good? Okay. Okay, so this is just a high-level summary slide to show you where the numbers land. We just went over the revenues. Then underneath that, you have the expenditures. And then the transfers out, we have to remember that this year, it's already last year for me. I'm already in 16-17 because I've been working in that budget for so long. But this year, 15-16, we had the 19 million in transfers out. You'll remember that's 11.8 million for the campus center that we set aside to fund the portion that we have to fund. The state's funding about 2/3 of it. We fund 1/3 of it. So we set that aside. So that's shown as a transfer out. We transferred out 2 million to construction, 2.5 million to equipment, 1.5 million to swing space, $800,000 to the facility master plan. So that's a rough idea of what all of those larger transfers were in 15-16. Very unusual year. We had a lot of one-time revenues in 15-16 and were able to pull out that money we needed for campus center. So that's where that's why that's a bit higher than it has been historically. And then you can see the excess of revenues is negative for 15-16 and 16-17. And I'm going to jump on to the next slide so you can see how that impacts our ending fund balances.
Question.
Yes.
That was an interesting expression you used. Excess of
Yeah,
revenues is negative.
that's right.
And then you went on to the next thing, and I thought, whoa.
Normally, it's a positive number, so the expression makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the red things in the parentheses.
yeah.
And then I have a question, Marcia.
Okay.
If you go on to the next slide.
Wait,
Take
Lindsay,
it.
we have another.
Yeah.
Oh, Lindsay, I was just wondering if you could repeat the wonderful list of transfers. Just again, I know we've heard them a million times in fiscal, like 11.8 went to this, it's designated earmark, but if you could slow down and maybe people can make a note of that, because I know that's
Few more
important.
slides, and it's all listed.
Oh.
In about
Okay,
3
good.
slides, they're all
Perfect.
there. So
Yeah.
we're going to go through them again.
Because I know that'll be a good cheat
I know.
sheet. That was great for us.
Yeah, each one of these slides has a lot of the same numbers listed again at different levels of detail, so it kind of gives you a chance to absorb it at different levels. But yes, we'll go through it again.
So
Okay.
just to make sure that I understand this,
Yes.
another way of saying this would be a decline of revenues.
It's not a
Decrease.
decline of revenues, no. So if you go on to this next slide, Dr. Haslam, and oops, sorry, I didn't mean to push that button. So you can see, let's actually start with 14-15. Our revenues were 96 million. Our expenditures were 92 million. So this is before transfers. Our revenues exceeded our expenditures by 3.2 million. Then we had $1 million of transfers out. So we ended with 2 million exceeding our expenditures and transfers. So our ending fund balances grew from the beginning of 14-15 to the end, okay? So then you can extrapolate that same type of description to the other years. So 15-16, we had a lot of one-time revenues, so our revenues really grew. We exceeded $100 million. Prior to transfers out, just looking at expenditures here, we exceeded our expenditures, by $13 million. Then we did those large transfers out we just talked about. That gives us our negative $6 million, reducing our ending fund balance from 31 down to 25.
I see.
But it never reduces below the board policy.
Correct.
Of reserves.
Right.
So, this
Absolutely.
gave us the opportunity, as Veronica has said, and we'll see, to do some high-priority things and to leverage state funding for the campus center as an example.
Mm-hmm. Right. You okay now with that one? Yeah, okay. So the only other thing I wanted to point out on this slide, it's a good place to refer, and I apologize, I'm speaking pretty much to the board members because I did hand them some paper before this. If you refer to the couple of pages that I marked as variance analysis, you've seen them before, hopefully, but this is a nice time to pull those out. And starting with the revenue one, you can see this $10 million variance between the 15-16 and 16-17 revenues. You can see where the large variances are in our revenue areas. We've already talked about it, but one of the biggest decreases in our revenues is the $4.3 million related to the FTS reduction. We do have the $907,000 increase of base apportionment. And then we have the $1.1 million reduction related to the EPA. And this one I alluded to earlier, the state mandates. In 15-16, we received a very large one-time state mandated reimbursement funding of $7.9 million. So that's why that $108,000 is so large. And this year, we're getting another $1.3 million, which is great, but it's much less than 7.9. So it's a $6.6 million reduction in our one-time revenues.
Variance.
Yes, thank you.
Lindsay, I have a question. Are you complete with this slide?
No, but you can ask if you're
Oh,
going to ask about
okay.
revenues, no problem.
Well, down in the lower right-hand corner where we have our ending balances, we have, if I can see it correctly, a $23 million number.
Yes,
And this is the unrestricted, let's see, general fund, unrestricted and restricted. And I'm looking at the tentative budget spreadsheet
Yeah.
for both. And the comparable lower right-hand corner number is 21,773,000. I'm just wondering why restricted plus unrestricted is different on ending balances.
there actually is no difference if you go to the attachments that I gave you today
Okay.
and look at that same piece of paper. Sorry for sending you all around. You can go to that spreadsheet one, so you see the same exact format if you like. What happened between last week and today is a decision about how much money we're going to spend in program review. So the difference you're seeing there is I implemented the decision the college made about how much to spend on program review. That was not included a week ago. We are constantly working on refining the budget.
No, I appreciate
So,
that. I'm just trying
that's
to.
what it is.
My thought process is that.
There's no ending fund balances in
Unrestricted
restricted.
is the one that varies because that's unrestricted.
Yeah.
Restricted is basically a zero-sum game.
Correct.
What comes in
Yep.
goes out, end of story. So
Exactly.
when the end number, the ending balance was
23 million.
different, that's what was confusing me.
There was actually a change from last week. yeah,
Okay.
Related to
So I
program
appreciate.
review.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what
You
happened.
bet.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll point it out to you when we get there. You'll see it. Yep. Okay, so real briefly, also on the second variance detail document, that's the expenditures, you can see, again, kind of how we went through the revenue side. This $222,000 variance between the adjusted budget and the tentative budget on the expenses is made up of a lot of items, many small, many offsetting each other. The large one to point out, that we already discussed, is the PERS and STIRS increase. You see that $1 million increase there in employee benefits. That's primarily comprised of the PERS and STIRS rate increases. Okay. Any questions on the expenditure area? No? All right. So, let's keep going. On to the transfers. You know, I'm going to back up for 1 second, because I want to point this out. Okay, so we're going to look at a slide that details these transfers out of the unrestricted general fund. Okay, so the 19.3 million and then the 4.2 million. This next slide ties right to that here. Okay? So in 15, well, not in 15, 16, I'll just point out the differences here. So to the construction fund, just related to district projects, we will be funding in 16, 17, $615,000 that's specific to ongoing projects that are required to be funded, and the loan repayments of $283,000. So this $898,000 is 615 plus 283. Okay? It's worth noting that the construction fund in 15-16 received more money from the general fund in the form of a transfer, and they use that to fund many projects. But in 16-17, the construction fund will receive that $1.3 million of deferred maintenance one-time funding. Okay? And then the equipment fund is very similar. The equipment fund in 15-16 received $2.7 million for things such as program review, IT refresh, and in 16-17, they'll get the other half of the 2.6. They'll also get 1.3 million of revenue for the instructional equipment one-time funds. Okay? Here you can see the large one-time transfers that were made in 15-16, the campus center, swing space, facility master plan. We are going to transfer a little more to complete the facility master plan in 16-17. Any questions about the transfers? Does that help?
No, in the facility master plan, for some reason, I thought that we had already, the whole thing was covered, but no, we still anticipated to
Yeah, the
pay for the.
contract, the contract you approved had a Part A and a Part B.
So this is the last.
This is it, done. We will have a 15, 20-year master plan.
So that 360 is included in the original contract as Part B?
The one that you approved like this year sometime, early this year, maybe September, October, I'd have to go back.
Okay. Yeah, I might have some questions, but I think it'll make more sense at the end.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
okay.
All right. Okay. I don't really want to bore everyone with reading everything off this slide, but all the details here are what I would point out. The state revenues for the construction fund do look different than they have historically because we have this 1.3 million coming in for deferred maintenance, and we also have 6 million coming in for the funding of the campus center. So the way that works is we've set aside the 11 million that we have to cover. The rest will be covered by the state, but we spend the money, then we ask to be reimbursed. So we're going to get revenue from the state, and then we're going to pay for things on our own and be reimbursed. So this 6 million up here at the top is just showing that we're estimating we'll get about 6 million from the state, and over here, we're estimating we'll spend about 7 million. So if you drop down to our ending fund balances here, we do have the funds earmarked in their own construction funds. So there'll be 2 million per the board policy for construction, 10.3 left for campus center, and that 10.3 is a reduction of 1 million, that difference between the 6 and the 7. And that's just a difference in timing. There's no way the state will reimburse us everything all within the same fiscal year. Okay? All the details of the expenses that will be spent through the construction fund are here. We've talked about a handful of them already because they are funded by transfers from the general fund. And we are expecting to spend all the swing space money that we transferred in this year through all of next year, so there won't be anything left for swing space in our ending fund balances. Any questions about the construction fund?
So Lindsay, you said you anticipate the total campus center classroom will cost, no, sorry,
No, this is just for 16, 17.
Okay,
So
never mind.
we'll
I'm
spend
thinking
a
ahead.
lot more than this in total, yeah.
Never mind. I have another question then for later, and I think you'll get to
Campus
it.
center's about 30 million.
Yeah, that's what
20 from the state, 10,
and then the 11.8 that we,
say
and
again?
then the 11.8 we saved.
Yes.
Yes.
And this reimbursement process, is it fairly rapid, or are there delays? Is that
No,
something we should be concerned about?
I haven't experienced it. Maybe Dr. Gaskin can speak to it, but I've never
Yeah, but
experienced
they-
it. I
we
think
have
it's
never
pretty
built a
straightforward.
building like this. I had experience, and they're fairly, it's a fairly routine process of filing and reimbursement because everybody's building buildings across the state, so funded by.
So you're saying it's not something we should be concerned about?
No, oh, no. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Joe, you're not in the mic, so.
He said it takes
Lindsay,
about 60 days
Great.
to be refunded,
Thank you.
not too long. Okay. Anything else on the construction fund? We're okay? All right, on to the equipment fund. So very similar, because they are receiving that same one-time funding, but for instructional equipment, the 1.3 million. And I've just listed out here all of the plans within the tentative budget of what these expenditures would cover in 16-17. We always have this $524,000 that we need to cover from the equipment fund that's from various departments. We have program review items that are carryovers from prior years. We allow a carryover of 2 years, so we have to account for those. Copier refresh, IT refresh, we're going to be able to fund a major portion of the IT refresh from this instructional-only funding. Those items are instructional refresh items, so that's good news. And also 1 million of the program review request for 16-17. Those are the instructional-only items. So there is a portion of program review that, as of the tentative budget, are not funded at this time. And that'll be discussed in more detail. There is also no transfer in from the general fund to the equipment fund. And the offset is that revenue we're receiving for instructional equipment. Okay, and then we're projecting to end at the 1.5 million. That's always the way we project this. Even though there's program review carryover money every year, we're always higher than this at the end of every year. We have to budget that everything is going to be spent from program review, but it isn't. It's just the best we can do.
Lindsay, could you just repeat, because I may have missed it, how much is not funded this year?
I can. It's about $700,000 is not funded, and those items are non-instructional items.
And that's program review.
Yes, for 16-17. Any other questions about equipment fund? No? All right, great. Okay, this is just a reminder. I noticed that I bring this up often in presentations, so I thought I'd throw a slide up there about the new, it's not so new anymore, but it still feels a little new, the board policy on reserves. So as a refresher, this is how the board has set up our reserve policy, where we have our 5% minimum, which is state required, and then the board has opted to also have us cover all the bank TLUs, and an additional 15% of expenditures is to be set aside in reserves, or the equivalent of any deferrals, which luckily we're not in a situation where we're having to calculate deferrals. There's no deferrals from the state at this time. And then we have the construction fund has a base of 2 million, and the equipment fund has a base of 1.5 million. Okay? So I did a little bit of an updated analysis through the Chancellor's office of where we land, where Santa Barbara City College lands in terms of our reserves. And the data is as of June 30th, 2015, through the 311 reports that are provided by all of the colleges. And what this shows us, when we look at all 72 districts, is that these ratios of how much a community college puts in their reserves compared to expenditures, it ranges anywhere from well below the 5% required amount of 3.9% all the way up to 36.5%, to give you an idea of where the different colleges are landing. It's somewhere in between there. As of June 30th, 2015, we landed as the third highest community college in the state, with our reserves at 33.9% of unrestricted expenditures, okay? The average as of June 30, 2015, was 17% or $15 million. If you equate that to us, at 17%, we'd be at $16.5 million. It's a little bit hard to look at the information when you look at it at a very detailed level because some schools are very, very small in terms of their revenues or expenditures, and some are very big. So the numbers, the percentage could be high, but the dollar amount would be low. But this gives you an idea of how we fall compared to other colleges. Okay?
Question. The 33.9% reserve number includes what?
How about I show you on the next slide?
Okay, perfect.
It's right here. Okay, the 33.9% is right here. Okay, as of June 30th, 2015, we had our 5% set aside, our bank TLUs, no deferrals, and then the additional 15%. So the 15% is just calculated based on what were our expenditures for that year. This is 15% of our expenditures. And then we had, so here's our board policy reserve amount is 19. That's the designated amount, 19.7 million. We also had 11 million sitting in our reserve. So our total ending fund balances were 31 million. So when you add in that undesignated amount, you get to the 33.9%. So here you can see our board policy amount was 21%, but we actually landed at 33.9% last year.
Okay, so that
That's the
11
difference between
million,
the two.
however, was what went to Campus Center, right?
Pretty much, yes.
But this was as of
Yeah.
June 30th, this was 14-15. So at the end of 14-15, this is where we landed. At the end of 15-16, that's your middle column. So yes, that's why we made the recommendation to.
Including the state mandated
Okay,
one-time.
but we are no
revenues.
longer anywhere, we're not at the 33.9 is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. So
And we
here-
moved that money, as you said, over for Campus Center, so it's now designated
We
money.
wanted it comparison-wise with state, on the
Right, and
same
you-
academic year, fiscal year.
And you don't have the 16 numbers
16,
yet.
no. So we're not on June 30th, 2016 yet. But yes, you can see here that the 11 million undesignated declines to 4.9 and then 3.3 for our 16-17 tentative budget. Okay? Any questions about this one? And we, of course, always have our favorite slide, the next one on our ending fund balances. This graphical chart that we show every time. Okay, so this line right here is our minimum fund balance of 20.5. That's the board reserve amount. And what we're saying is we'll have 23 million, so slightly above that line. Okay? And these big green bars, that's the construction fund. So this shows that there's a lot of money in the construction fund because we set aside that money intentionally for the campus center swing space facility master plan. And then a lot of it will still be there because we're just not going to expend it all that quickly because the building won't be done at that point in time. Okay? Any questions about this one? No? All right. And the next slide is just the same information, but numerically, including the bond fund, just in case anybody was interested where we're at with the bond fund. It should be 0 at the end of next year. We did do one additional drawdown, the final drawdown in 15-16. That's why the balance has gone up, but we'll be spending all that money through the end of next year. Okay? All right. We made it through all the meaty stuff. The rest of it gets easier. So this is the restricted general funds. When I say restricted, we're talking about things like SSSP, student equity, DSPS, EOPS. As was pointed out earlier, this always nets down to 0 at the end. Their revenues match their expenditures. At this point in time, we do our best we can to estimate, but it's very hard to know the categoricals budgets at this time. It's really done later in the year. The only thing I have noted on here or made obvious is due to our FTS decline, our revenues related to those categoricals are tied to our FTS. So when our FTS declines, we do receive less funding for DSPS, SSSP, and so on. So I just made a kind of an obvious item here to show that our revenues will go down and we'll make the expenditures match. Okay? All right. Other special revenue funds, for anyone who's been looking at these slides for 20 years, these used to be included in the restricted funds. We decided to pull them out because they do need to be discussed and looked at, and they do have ending fund balances that are important to be made aware of. Lottery, I know this came up recently, I wasn't here, but the ending fund balance in lottery has been over $1 million and it's been growing. So that's where we're at with lottery. The revenue is pretty consistent each year, coming in from the lottery funds. Parking, let's see. The only other one I wanted to discuss was rental of facilities. Because you can't see prior year here, because we just have 16, 17 up here, you're not seeing the reduction in revenues. Right here's where we used to book the Kaplan revenue. So this is about $640,000 lower than it has been historically. And where that money used to go, you used to see the revenue here, and you used to see a very large transfer out. The large transfer out would go to the construction fund and also partly to athletics. And we just don't have that anymore. So the construction fund isn't receiving about $600,000 worth of year due to the loss of Kaplan revenue. Okay? So that's something we've had to adjust for in the construction fund. Fiduciary funds, the only thing fun to point out here is how much money we receive in financial aid for our students. It's fantastic. It's a very large number. It is just a pass-through, but $32 million to our students is a wonderful benefit to them. Okay, campus store. Right now, as we speak, the campus store is moving, so kind of exciting, but makes budgeting a little bit tricky for next year. What you're seeing here is an estimate of a slight reduction in the revenue because with the move and with them being in a swing space environment, we're not projecting their revenues to be as high as they have been this year. We also know they're going to spend about $3 million on that remodel. So you're seeing their expenditures being $3 million higher to account for that remodel. And that $3 million will come out of their reserves. So their reserves right now are over $6 million. Their reserves will drop down to about $3 million. And their reserves will still be high enough to cover their cash flow needs of buying books, which are quite expensive. And the minimum reserve that they have internally established will still be there. So the other change that's on here from prior years is historically the bookstore funded various programs to the tune of about $183,000. You would see that here in the transfer out line. And they just don't have the ability to do that in this climate of what's going on. But we have done some work with those programs to ensure that they had enough money covered to make sure there were no impacts to those programs in 16-17. So we've planned that out. Okay. Food services, similar environment. It hasn't happened yet, but the end of this calendar year in December, Campus Center will be closed down to do the Campus Center replacement project. And we're just really not sure what that's going to mean. Our food service director is putting a lot of work into getting other type of food service venues established, mostly trucks and very elaborate trucks, not little food service trucks, but trailers, pretty exciting food service venue options while the Campus Center is being redone. So this is really just a rough estimate. We're hoping they'll break even. We don't know how it's going to look, but we'll be revisiting it for the adopted or final budget. Children's Center is very standard each year. Their revenues come in at about the same amount and their expenditures are about the same each year. And they always have a shortfall. The general fund does cover that shortfall each year. It's been a little bit lower the last couple years, the amount that the general fund has covered, just because their reserves were just inching up a little bit. So we transferred to them a little less so they could inch their reserves back down. And now we'll probably be transferring about $200,000 a year ongoing to fund that program. CLL has also been pretty consistent, even though they're brand new, which is pretty exciting. There was a slight impact in 2015 because of the stock market. Believe it or not, the stock market does impact their students. Their student base doesn't spend as much money when the stock market isn't doing as well. So their enrollment and contact hours did come down a little bit in 15-16. But they're still doing okay. They have a very a very small shortfall that happens each year, and they cover that by donations that they still have in their CLL trusts or donations that they receive throughout the year. They do still receive donations, and then a little bit from their reserves. So they're right around break even for this year and for next year, which is great. Measure V bond, this is just to show that here's the remaining portion of our bond that we drew down in 15-16. We spent quite a bit of the money this year, and next year there won't be any additional revenues. We'll spend the rest of the money, at least that's what we're projecting at this point in time, and we'll be down to 0 for our Measure V bond. Okay? STRS and PERS, this is just a reminder. We've been looking at this information, I think, for over a year now. This is just an updated slide showing where we're landing with the increases in the STRS and PERS rates and how it's going to impact the college over the 7 years that the increases are taking place. A year ago when we looked at this, we almost came up with the same exact number, about 5.7 million. So even as our actuals come in, we're coming in right where we've projected, and we have planned this through our tentative budget each year, and we're constantly making sure we can cover this increase in costs. So, any questions about PERS and STRS? Okay. We're almost there, I promise. I know. Budgets are only really fun to me. Okay. So, this slide is just talking about items that could change between now, the tentative budget, and the adopted budget in September. That has to be board approved by September 15th. As I discussed very, very early on in the presentation, we know that fall 2016 is looking down in our FTS enrollment further. It's looking worse than the 7.3%, so we will be looking at that and adjusting the final budget as soon as those numbers are more clear. And related to that, those categorical programs, their revenues will also be lower, but they lower their expenditures to match the revenues. Okay? Labor negotiations are currently in progress. We don't know what that will mean, but that is happening right now. And these last few are always here at this point in time. We don't have the new unemployment contribution rates. We don't have the new worker comp rates. And we always look at our utilities, contracts, et cetera, after the year is closed to see where they landed and then decide if we need to adjust the budget for any reason in those areas. Okay?
Lindsay,
Yeah,
question.
you
The categorical, does that follow the same path in terms of stability funding, or does it go down without stability funding?
There's no stability funding for categoricals.
Say that again?
There's no stability funding for categoricals.
Okay, so the categorical portion of our budget is impacted immediately, not a delay of 1 year.
I think so.
I believe so. The categorical funding we receive, we always receive it so during the year. I don't want to say late, but we receive it in September, October, November.
And the problem with that, why we're hemming and hawing is that it fluctuates, our amount fluctuates from the predetermination to the actual determination. We just received distribution from the state for carryover funds that were not expended by other colleges. So we tend to budget very conservatively, and we don't create an actual budget till about November-ish, when we have the allocations, and that's very common.
Okay, no, I was mostly trying to understand where stability fit in, and we're saying it doesn't.
Does,
No.
Okay.
Okay, and then this last slide is just pointing out items that may occur after the final budget has been adopted. These are things to consider throughout the year that may become adjustments throughout the year. Maybe they won't, but we know Prop 30 after the November election, maybe we'll get good news and it's reinstated, so we'd have an additional 1.1 million in revenues. That's a possibility of something to happen after the budget is finalized and adopted. We don't ever include a deficit factor, but sometimes they happen throughout the year, and they do change throughout the year, so it's something to be aware of. At the district, we might have unexpected deferred maintenance cost we have to cover. We may receive revenues or prior year recalculations, excuse me, or apportionment funding. That happens. There's always the prospect of unexpected expenditures. We have these large construction projects going on And there's lots of contingencies built into those projects and those contracts, but there's a possibility that it would exceed those, so something to be aware of. Another one that we don't talk about a whole lot, but it does have a substantial budget impact, is that in our budget, we assume that every employee we have here will be here all year long. If someone retires or isn't here for whatever reason, and it takes us 6 months to rehire that person, that's a savings to us, because we budget that everyone is here all year long. Yeah.
Lindsay, I'm not sure you're aware, because I think it was before your time, but when we discussed the budget policy on best reasonable estimate, the discussion was specifically not to assume 100% employment the entire year, but to make our best estimate of what we see as it moves forward. So I'm a little surprised that's what we're budgeting.
I have never heard that,
That was
4
the,
years.
that was the discussion.
never heard
at
that.
the-
No, and typically, the colleges where I've been at, we have budgeted 100% and not budgeted trying to create an absence factor or a vacancy factor. And I've never heard of that. And I certainly have not heard of it in the 4 years I've been here.
We do discuss it and talk about it, we're aware of it, but it'd be really hard to quantify the number.
I think the
no.
discussion was about, okay, we have a history. We understand roughly what that history is. So based on that history, we could make best reasonable estimates for those numbers. But, you know, I'm just letting you know, I'm sure it was before your time,
Yeah.
so.
All right. Oh, these last couple here, what this is referring to is often our operating supply budgets don't get spent all of the way, and that would be a savings to us as well. And this final one is actually the opposite way around, because we've built into the budget a reduction of hourlies of 400,000 relating to the FTS decline. We need to keep our eye on that, and we'll see if we really can reduce by 400,000 and where that lands. That could be a variance that we're not expecting there as well. So that's it. That's what I have for you. Any other questions at the end? Yeah?
Anyone else have questions? Guys? Nobody? Okay, I have a couple.
Sure.
I just want to be sure that I'm clear on the budget that came before fiscal a couple weeks ago and this budget, and I recognize that they're changing all the time.
You bet.
But I wanted to be sure that I understood the major moving parts.
Yeah.
And as I see the moving parts here, when we were talking about it in fiscal, we had about 900,000 transfer from general fund to construction. And now we have about 4 million. And the change, one of which we discussed in fiscal, was the
0.8.
2.8 for West Campus to
And the three.
catch up to our
360.
estimate, and 360 for facility master plan, which I wasn't
Those two
aware
are
of.
the new ones, yes.
Okay. And then the other major change that I was not aware of, and I think we didn't talk about in fiscal, was the bookstore, the cost of the bookstore remodel.
Okay.
And I haven't caught up to your new
That's okay. I
paper.
apologize.
But in the paper we had with the notice of the meeting, it was described as 3.5 million cost estimate, and I think you were
Oh,
saying
yes.
3 million?
I can explain that.
With a $500,000 loan from construction, so.
Yes, there's a $500,000 loan from the construction fund to the campus store to help fund that remodel. Yes, so they're going to spend about $3 million of their own funding, bringing their reserve down by about $3 million. But you're right, it's $3.5 million total that they're planning on spending.
And why the loan?
To make sure that their reserves stay high enough to cover their operating costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where does the loan show up in the construction page?
I will show you. Actually, I might put it back up here for you. It's on the construction tab, right here. It's a transfer out in this fiscal year.
Okay, I'm looking at what was noticed, not the new one, but let me try.
Number 9 is the same page.
It's slide number 9, if that helps, or the construction fund.
Okay, so I see an interfund transfer out in 15-16?
Yes. It was board approved.
So this already happened?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
It's not in the coming budget, is what you're
Correct.
saying?
yes.
All right.
Correct.
And I think I'm understanding this from what you've said, but let me make sure I'm clear too. But when, in 2011, well before your time, when the board was trying to work through what our total reserves were and was looking at all the various places those reserves appeared, including the JPA joint project money, the bookstore came up because there are reserves shown there. And what I understood at the time was we were told that that's not money, that's their assets. So you can't spend it on anything, and therefore it's not something that you would consider part of your reserve. Now, obviously, that's not now matching up with what we're describing. So can you maybe re-describe what that ending balance is for bookstore?
Yeah, since I wasn't here in 2011 and I haven't.
No, I
looked
know,
at their
I
reserves,
realize that, but I'm just asking to
know.
maybe for an update of what it,
I'm sure Joe.
how it would be described.
Yeah, I don't know what the reserves were.
Yeah.
It would appear that they've reassessed the operating capital needs.
Yeah.
and-
It could be.
Yeah,
That's
that's
kind of what
probably
I'm thinking.
The reserves always included the allocated, which covered inventory and the ongoing inventory cash needs, but it also included the accrual that they used for the project. So the full reserve for the bookstore included the capital projects reserve, but also
Which would be money?
which was money,
Okay, and?
the cash flow, the reserves that it carried at year end are for cash flow purposes for carrying the inventory balances on the books, because as you can imagine, they buy significantly high dollars worth of books at the beginning of every semester, and then they get the money back after they purchase them, because we buy them in advance of the semester. We get the money back over time, so it balances that out. But the reserves are listed, but the assets are also listed. Does
So
that
they're
make sense?
combined in that one set of ending balances.
Yeah, the ones-
And what remains is what you're saying they need to
it's the
operate.
cash that they need to operate
Okay,
over the course of the year. So when you look at it over the course of the year, we don't run active reserves, but that reserve would drop significantly just before fall semester started. It would go down a couple $1 million for the books that they buy, and then it would go back up, and then back down, then back up. So we look at just at year end, so it's the snapshot. It doesn't show the actual flow of time, across time.
okay, now will that reserve have a component added to it from the transfer from lottery funds?
The way that the transfer from the lottery funds?
Yeah, you
goes-
asked us last time
Yes,
to approve
it
the
went-
500,000 for that.
Yes, and that's going into the purchase for rental books. So what happens there is that's cash that will go in, but then will go out and will be carried in the rental inventory, which is a separate inventory. So that cash will be expended, rents will be collected, but only the books are rented out at, say, approximately 25% of their sale value.
Mhm.
Or their, I'm sorry, of the retail value. So there's a wholesale cost, what they purchase it for, that money will go out. And so over time, as they collect the rentals, they'll continue to buy more books and increase the rental program. But that's what that seed money's for. You won't see a cash balance from that seed money because it'll go into the purchase of inventory, which is then rented out.
So it won't show up in the ending balances while it's in transition or something?
No, it'll show up though in their assets as inventory at the end of the year. It'll be held inventory.
Assets as textbooks, not as cash?
As textbooks.
Okay. And normally, would that be included in their operating expense, but for this project, or not? I mean, the things that they want to operate during the year, buy books, sell supplies, all that sort of stuff, is their operating, right?
Yes, the cash flow that they need is over the course of the year to pay to pay all your expenses, to purchase inventory, but also to pay payroll, supplies, and then also there are other retail purchases that they make that they hold in inventory again at the end of the year. So, but what's in reserves at the end of each year is just the cash that's held by them. So that's why you'll see the $3 million drop in reserves as that capital project is completed.
Okay. Now, you just mentioned payroll. Do the employees not show up in our academic and classified categories?
No, they do not. They show up, they're separate. They're in the books, they're held in that.
Only in the bookstore in that particular fund?
Yes.
Okay. That clarifies it. Thank you.
Madam
Oh, Marianne.
Chairperson, I'd like to request that at the next trustee meeting, we hear a presentation from the Facilities Committee on the bookstore plan. I've had several citizens ask about, they know that we're working on the bookstore, and they'd like to know it, and so would I. Just in general terms, what the plan is.
I thought we had that.
Yeah, I was going to say, we had that in
We already
October.
did that.
When was that?
October, it was a long presentation.
Right.
Yeah.
And you think that this matches that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and the
exactly,
facilities-
Oh, it
exactly what
didn't
we had
look,
discussed.
if you're sure that it does, then I back off.
Yeah, it's,
It didn't look like the same amounts of money that I
Of
thought.
course, it is. Yes, we would have indicated to you if it wasn't. The Facilities Committee will be updated, as they usually are quarterly, at our next meeting next Monday.
Right, thank you.
Oh,
I just have one thing, and it's kind of a big picture for me. We are seeing the FTES generated down 7.3, probably more.
projected.
But what we're projecting for next year is 7.0. And,
That has to do with the one-year lag of stability.
oh, duh.
Does that answer it?
Yeah, no, now it makes sense, except that we're looking at it being flat.
For the subsequent years thereafter,
Yeah.
but that's a projection.
I know it
We
is.
can't- We don't even,
I know, but my question is that a projection through the chancellor's office? Or how do
no, it's for
we
you
just-
all. You had requested a long-term projection.
Yeah.
It is a projection that is not based in any
I know.
data.
I know.
So, no, we're not, and there's no funding, planning attached to that.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The ebb and flow of enrollment, we cannot predict 2 years out, 1 year
Yeah.
out.
And of course, people now are saying, oh my gosh, it's going to be down next year and the next year, because it's always darkest right before something happens, but so, and I know you can't be, a fortune teller or anything like that, but is there any way we can look at it and, I don't even know why it's down now, except
Oh.
that the Cal States and UCs are taking
Yes.
more people.
They have a mandate to take more people.
Right.
We have a tremendously high cost of living environment
Sure,
here.
we've always-
High rental costs, low vacancy rates. And when the economy, you see all of the help
know.
wanted signs, when the economy improves, community college enrollments decline. Our sister institutions across the state are experiencing a decline. What they aren't experiencing is the exacerbation of factors central to our region that are really impacting
Yeah.
our decline.
Yeah, okay.
So since you brought it up, may I just give an estimate on where we are right now? Summer one has not concluded, but we are looking at perhaps a 9% decline as compared to last summer one. Summer two has not started. So this is all projections, all estimates. And summer two looks like about a 6% decline from last summer two. And do not hold us to this. Fall, and yesterday was the graduation for the high school students. So if you look at fall enrollment today as compared to fall enrollment a year ago today, we're down 15%. We know that that will fluctuate and change. So,
I'm recalling in connection with Marty's question here, I am recalling that Jack, when he did his enrollment report to us, one of the things that was being considered was when in which portions of our student body does it drop? So when you've got new students who are coming in, then a certain percentage of them continue the next year. If there's not as many coming in, then you can predict you will not have as many carrying over the next year. So you can do some things. That's not to say there's a crystal ball that's easy to work with.
Well, we were surprised. We believe the economy is what's impacting summer. Summer doesn't get impacted by that because incoming freshmen come in the fall. But summer it can be pretty comparable, but we believe that the economy is taking a toll well, it's a good thing, but taking a toll on enrollments. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, it went out of my head. It was related to what you two just said, so it'll come back.
Greg?
Yeah, great topic, Marty, for bringing that up.
Yes.
I recall us asking repeatedly, could we get some kind of a forecast, a stab, a swag, something, just to look at it instead of, we figured that staff could do it better than we could do it as individuals, maybe. And I think you did. And it just helps us to think longer term and take that high view instead of down, picking apart the year. We want to see that long term. And so any effort you put into that is not wasted. It's even if it's as simple as what you did, it's right there in front of us, and we can compare and see what's going on. And we'd appreciate it if you would continue that effort. At least some of us would.
I'm wondering, so I learned from our high schools that we did like 400 students in 1 week through the College Promise, our counselors at the high school. And that's,
280 is what I heard from Jeff today.
and at one high school, I forget what high school, anyway. And so I'm thinking, wow, they're taking off. Our folks are on the ground, families, you're hearing about this at the elementary school level. Like I heard about this in my classroom. So the excitement is definitely there. I'm wondering, when we look at now all the students, eyes on SBCC, students wanting to enroll, and I did see that email that we have one lovely person at the foundation answering the phone. What can we do on the college end to support the efforts of the foundation? The foundation has gone big with this idea of supporting our local students, and they're manning it. I saw an email with one person on the phone. And so as we look at, getting students onto campus and student success and getting them through all the wonderful systems that we have here, what can we do to support them? Because I think that I believe that this directly ties into enrollment and getting as many students into our campus.
Well, you were given a presentation by Vanessa Pelton, who is our outreach coordinator, and she gave you a view of the plethora of outreach activities and functions and events and processes and systems that are in place. So it's not in isolation. The College Promise is absolutely not in isolation from what we do. And we're providing direct support through financial aid, admissions and records, outreach, counseling.
Oh, no, I have no doubt about that. My question was, how do we physically get the manpower? How can we support to get that manpower? Because I guess I'm talking about human capital to support them to get these students. And to really, I think, as they're rolling out this process, they're learning of kinks. I just learned that if the students did not designate their ending date on their application, our admissions office cannot flag them for the promise. And so there's like a glitch in our admissions process right now holding them. And so I'm just wondering.
Certainly talk about that offline, but I'd like to get back to the budget if we could.
Well, no, I think because when I think of our enrollment, this is a huge time where I think a lot of students are applying to the college. And so as a board and at the college, what we can do to support that.
There's no indication right now that we are exceeding the number of high school students who typically enroll at SBCC because of the College Promise. You will recall that we near 50% in prior years of high school students who matriculate from our local high school districts who come to the college. So as far as staffing up, we haven't seen the need to. And when you talk with Jeff, you'll see, as we have talked about, we're projecting perhaps 80 students more overall who come to us as a consequence of the College Promise. Now, that doesn't mean that more of them aren't full-time. They are. That's the whole point. So staffing-wise, we're not sure that we need to staff up because we've always served a very large percentage of our local high school population. It's just that now they get funded, they get textbooks, but they have to commit to full-time. So that's where we don't know where we'll all end up.
Yeah, I'm not sure that answered my question, but that's fine. I mean,
We
we
don't
can.
need to staff up.
That wasn't my question. I think and I guess we can connect with Jeff in a couple weeks and just kind of, I'm thinking
Yeah,
a bigger
what I-
picture.
What I was hearing you talk about is, does Jeff have the resources he needs, and could we lend a helping hand if needed? And maybe we
Yeah,
could
we
just
can talk
ask
about that.
someone
My
to ask that.
understanding
Yeah,
Ditto.
Going back to Marty's question for just a sec, I understand Jack did a further analysis of enrollment, like the one we heard in last fall for spring, and I'm wondering if the board would be interested in hearing.
We had it scheduled for June 23rd.
Okay, so we can look forward to that June 23rd.
Fantastic.
All right.
It's good.
May I ask,
Mary Ann.
then, the way we have done it in the past often is when there's a major construction project, it's reported on once in a while, just so we know progress. And so I'm wondering if it's appropriate to ask Jonathan to keep an eye on that. I remember the original presentation, and it was just great, but I haven't seen anything since, and that's really what I'm asking. So would you give us a periodic update once in a while?
Yeah, will do. We haven't met in facilities for a couple months now because of various
Yeah, I
issues,
understand.
so we'll have another meeting this month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
I have one final
Oh,
comment, and
go.
that's to extend really great appreciation to Lindsay and your staff. This was a remarkable job, and I know you've been working weekends and evenings, and it shows. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay,
Thank you.
at all. Because I know it isn't 100% Lindsay by any means.
No, but yeah, I just want to echo that. We appreciate how calm you are and how intelligent and articulate you are and how calm you are to answer to 7 people's questions. So thank you.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So I think we're ready to move on to the first reading of board policies. I know that there are a lot of them here, folks, and that's because we're getting to the end. Lori, did you want to talk about
We are at
that?
the end. With this, we have concluded this massive project that involved so many people on this campus and involved 2 of your board members for 4 years. And it's truly a milestone. And I just owe a debt of gratitude to Marcia and Marty and to our staff through BPAP and Academic Senate, classified staff, ALC, everyone who has been involved. Major effort.
I also wanted to make sure we thank Lori, too, because sometimes she would take one of the board policies and rewrite it herself, which is, was very needed at the time, and I thought,
Sometimes-
for her to jump in like that is really great.
Thank you.
Sometimes
Yeah.
right in the middle of the meeting.
Yeah, she did, and it was really good, so thank you for the work.
Okay. The other piece of this I just wanted to give you a heads up on, and that is, if you've noticed, there's some kind of smaller print, at least on my version, that talks about this comprehensive process has been to replace and repeal former district policies. So when we next see this at our next meeting, there will be an action item to officially repeal all the ones that we have not affirmatively now updated and added. And we want to make it crystal clear that the ones on the website, the ones we have been through in this process, are the board policies, and nothing else that may be floating around from older days and could even still be on the website is a board policy. So that will happen next time round. So let's take 4.2, academic affairs.
Can you
Well,
take
wait a minute, I'm
4.1?
skipping. I'm skipping one here, 4.1. General institution. Can we have a motion to approve those?
Actually, it's first reading.
Oh, you're
So
right.
it's just
I
first
forgot.
reading
First
on all of
reading,
these.
any questions,
Questions.
comments on those 4 policies? Okay, looks quiet. We will move on to 4.2, which is academic affairs. And we have 2 policies there. Questions, comments? All right. Chapter 5, student affairs, 4 policies. I guess the various committees that have worked this over did it to your satisfaction. Next one is 4.4, business and fiscal affairs. We have 1 policy there, perhaps dear to Peter's heart.
Bicycles?
Skateboards.
Yeah. Anything on wheels.
Yeah, whatever on wheels, all right. And 4.5, human resources, where we have many policies, thanks to Pat, and she did a great job. They went flying through our committee. I guess she had some help from other folk, but she got to watch the whole process, and then at the end, zoom, all ours were done. So, any questions or comments there? All right, we are done then with the first reading on these. They'll come back next time. Move on to board self-evaluation. This is something we do every year.
Marcia, before we go on, I know our student
Sure.
trustee's not here, and I know we haven't had skateboards on campus for time now, but has that been explored with our students in terms of what the possibility to, get them, where I know our campus has, the terrain is interesting. So it's not like you can just get a skateboard and get a smooth ride. But it is a recreational activity for many. So this would be something that I think would,
Are you?
I know our student trustee's not here, I'm just wondering what the students think about that, what they want, the option of getting off the bus and riding, I don't know. I know not that the bridge is wide enough that you would have a little lane, but.
The bridge has the problem of maintenance.
Right, no, I know, that's what I'm saying, I know that we have restrictions, but it is, I know UCSB has the nice lanes for skateboards and bikes, and it's a huge campus, and we're not flat like them, I realize that, but I don't know.
And we're getting kind of into a gray area there, because unless, maybe at our level, we should be asking, if there's been any dissatisfaction, or are there avenues, for the students to request or talk about it? Is there any matter being looked at?
Actually, what is happening is that the facility master plan is looking at our transit and circulation. We have one of the worst transit and circulation problems and challenges on this campus because of just coming in here, and our trucks, our delivery trucks, our bicyclists, our pedestrians, our parking. So that's all being looked at over the long haul. So we don't have the capacity to do, I know exactly what you're talking about at UCSB, and we don't have the capacity to do that. So, but it is being examined, and we'll have a recommendation with the FMP.
Okay, well, back to self-evaluation.
And we had a student rep on BPAP. Thank you, Pat. Thanks for reminding me. Yes. Okay.
Our self-evaluation is an annual process to look at certain basic indicators of board success, our specific goals for the year, and to look ahead as well. We will be developing board goals by, I believe it's the end of August normally, and so we have a chance to kind of reflect as we look at it. And as you will recall, and as you see the results, we changed it this year and made everybody write text. So, as Peter said, long document. Apparently, we succeeded in getting you to write text. And I thought one way to get at what we now see is to ask each of you to see whether there's a particular question, a comment that you read, or an issue that you would like to mention as we look at the results of that assessment. So, starting with Mary Ann, perhaps?
Well, I looked particularly, as you would expect, at the climate questions about academic, our support for academic work.
Is there a
The
number?
first one is
Can you
the
mention the
beginning.
number on
Number
that?
one is the beginning of that. There are several.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very interested in the answers, not because I don't believe we all care about it, but because they were expressed with clarity in the way we understand what our role is in the academic issues. I think better than we would have maybe 2 or 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, or 3, that's how long I've been on the board, in that we care about it, and all of us said that, but we also are aware of the fact that our job is encouragement and not decision-making about academic issues. And I saw that in 3 or 4 of the different questions where a different person put it that way. So I just would say, hooray for all of us. We're getting a clearer sense of who we are in relation to the main work of the college. I was excited about that. Number 1 is just the first example.
Okay. Veronica, did you have a particular, and it doesn't have to be just one, but did you see something that particularly spoke to you?
It wasn't, question 3, attentive and responsive to emerging educational needs. And I think that for those folks that read the New York Times articles and on Sunday mornings, emailing them and are on top of things like that, it was interesting that there's comments that we can do better. And I think that we all are interested in this, otherwise we wouldn't be serving on an educational board, right, on our spare time. And so I think my thinking is, how can we get the thoughts of someone on a Sunday morning reading the New York Times and getting an aha moment and maybe seeing how that relates to our mission, to someone that's, working with adults or working with just all the different facets of our community, and where can we have a venue to take all these responses where we can actually do something with it as it relates to our mission, if that makes sense. Because I know that everybody at this table, whether you're here or at home, you're constantly thinking about these things, and you see it in the texts or the emails or, hey, this is going on in the community, and this desire that everybody does want to stay on top of educational needs and trends, especially as they relate, for what we hear at the national level to the state level, and then more specifically, what we can do to further that mission. So that would be something of interest to me, knowing that there is a diversity here in both life, work, and interest in what we read. And
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's a topic for further discussion from time to time at board meetings, whether it's, in the focus, perhaps a focus presentation and then a discussion of a nationwide topic or statewide topic?
Maybe, and I think we've seen it in a couple of the resolutions that came for the board, where we took something that's, trending either nationwide or statewide, and then we brought it to the board. And so, yeah, definitely, I think that if there are things that are emerging, that it is important that we've done like one a year or something like that, I think. And I know at the board conferences, we've seen examples of a lot of different resolutions that have come to board as a way of bringing these topics to the table. So, yeah.
Mary Ann,
Are you thinking of something like a bulletin board? I've been a member of several organizations where people put up, I just read this wonderful article about such and such, and here's the reference, and something like that?
Maybe, maybe if just to anything that would narrow the scope to see what, and I know I like to look at Peter, because I know Peter is my Sunday morning friend.
Well, I was going to piggyback on what you said, because it seems to me that there's so much There's so much, which tells me a number of things. One of is, we're not alone. A lot of people are wondering, how is it that our students can learn more effectively to cope with the vicissitudes of not today, but tomorrow? So I think there's a lot of literature and a lot of sharing, and I've tried to do that, but periodically, the feedback I get is, it's overwhelming, don't do that. So Mary Ann's idea of some sort of a depository, perhaps with Google Docs or something, would be a useful additive. But then getting us to it,
Technologically challenged?
no, not technologically challenged. Again, it's a matter of volume.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's,
it's amazing.
and then it's a matter of judgment. I mean, some people actually know what they're talking about, and I'd like to identify those people.
Well, I know as I read various articles, I sometimes pause on certain themes that I see, and one of the recent ones has been this question or debate over what jobs will be taken by technology and what jobs will be left, and how will society adapt to that. Well, we're right in the middle of that problem, and so I'd be interested at some point to hear about the thinking of our faculty and staff and college on that issue, so I don't know. But I'm sure there are other issues. Maybe we could also have a list of issues as they occur to us that we could keep and then say, okay, let's pick one for this year and hear about it. Great.
Okay. I don't want to pick on like one point or just one, but as I read through all these and my colleagues' comments, these are topics that we don't usually get to sit here and discuss in our normal meetings. And, you know, we do talk to each other, but we can't violate the Brown Act, and so we don't have meetings other than here and discussions. And so when we do this and we take this survey, and then as I'm reading through, I'm saying, oh, I agree with that. I see that. Oh, he said the same thing as me, but in totally different words, that kind of thing. And then I saw things that, oh, they caught that. I didn't see it that way. So it's very, very informative and really, really useful in that sense. I didn't like being forced to write all those sentences.
We know that.
You know that. However, I did go to the trouble and do it,
Thank you.
even if I was the guy that was late getting through with it, because there's a
You
lot
didn't
of
have to
questions.
admit that.
Yes, I know, but it doesn't matter.
We knew.
So I was wondering, you know, if this helped me quite a bit to see all the different statements from everybody, which is, I'm sure, what you guys were getting after, even though I disagreed. So I was wrong, and I admit that at this point. But if we're going to use board time to go over every one of these questions and then take all the time to define the exact question, I found a lot of the questions would be the same. I didn't want to even give a different answer. I wasn't the only one, but they weren't. But I don't know that all of us agreed on any of the questions. It's just that we did agree here and there with each other on certain things. And I thought, you know, maybe we should just do this more often. That'll help us. And then if we get passionate about a subject, we could pull it out for a board meeting and for a discussion session, but just to get the ideas on paper, instead of talking to one board member walking out of the building one night and another board member coming in a couple days later, or an email going out here or there, all not in violation of the Brown Act. We're just talking about these subjects here and how could we improve something. And I thought, you know, maybe we should just do this a little bit more often. Maybe in smaller batches of questions, though, not like 50.
Maybe one thing that helps, Marianne and I, when we went to Palm Desert, one of the colleges, what they do is after every board meeting, they take either something in their educational master plan, maybe a goal or something, and so they measure that up against how did we fulfill that goal, or how did we get closer towards that strategic direction. And so maybe then you're collecting those little dipsticks throughout the year and sort of getting your formative data of, and maybe you're not going to, go to the scope of the whole plan, right? But, so maybe that could be an idea. And I forget the college who does it, but there is a model of something like that in place where they do it slowly throughout the year and get these types of conversations and sort of dipsticks on how they're doing. Does that sound kind of like
Yeah,
that?
it's just, yeah, that's intriguing. I don't know. I kind of like at least once a year doing a big shot like this.
No, yes, absolutely.
Because it has more impact this way. One little thing at a time doesn't seem to, I got to
Right.
see this, these areas where we seem to be in somewhat of agreement or awareness, and some areas where we weren't. And, it was, and things I didn't see. I just thought this was a good tool for that. I think it's really cumbersome to try to cover all these points at a meeting,
Right.
at a retreat. It's just like
Yeah.
a lot of detail. But it's great to be able to read it. So how do we take advantage of this and then pick out those topics that, which is what we'll do at our retreat. Can we do this? Does it have to be public knowledge? Is this available to
Oh,
everybody?
yeah, this is posted.
This is posted, so everybody can see this.
Yeah.
I don't care, that's fine.
No, that's,
But at least
Part of the
it's a channel here, and we're not breaking the rules.
no. I was going to suggest, I think everyone would probably suggest, well, if you're thinking of doing it more often, let's have fewer questions. Each time. But you could have some topic that is upcoming and maybe ask for board written input as well to go with the topic. It would just depend on what that topic is.
Do we have to use SurveyMonkey or something, the same kind of tool?
Well,
We
you-
could, I'm not complaining about
Yeah.
it. Is this an expensive thing to do?
No, we have a college license. We use it all
Okay.
the time.
So then we could use this to, just to communicate with a little bit?
No. Not communicate like that, no.
No, not for communicating with each
No,
other.
but we could-
for
we
public
could answer
survey, For a
questions.
survey that becomes public that answers questions, yes. And I don't know what I'm specific, but maybe we could say, okay, next month you will be considering the budget. What would you like to see? Or where do you feel that we could do better than last year, which is a lot of what this is about.
Yeah. A monkey, we
kind
could
of
do
an
a survey
advanced thing.
on budget
Yeah,
or
and I'm sure
facilities.
Lindsay probably doesn't think that's a good idea, but we might. So anyway,
Yeah, but we're not trying to get in the weeds, we're just trying to say,
Yeah.
these are the areas that we're most, yeah.
yeah.
I like that, Craig. No, I was just gonna say, you're thinking of how to leverage technology to, speedy up these conversations and get meaningful dialogue.
Okay.
Yeah, that's funny that you just, the difference was between, to me, it was impressive, because I guess I went over the line where this is almost like two-way communications. But it is, if you put the questions out there and then you pick up the answers, this is great. And then, but it's just the board doing this. So when we look at the answers, we know roughly where they came from, and then I think it's going to aid in our communications. And it'll tell us, it can point out those areas that we may be weak in or we need to put more effort into as individuals and/or as a group. I think it's a good tool for us and we should use it.
Good. Well, I'm glad you've been converted
Yeah, then all we need
with
is
a vengeance.
All we need is an employee to write the questions.
Don't think we have that.
No, we don't. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay, Lori, you smile all you want. I know you won't be here, but
No, I'm giving you the look, protecting my employees.
I can't see.
Remember, we're downsizing here, so.
Yeah, and I'd like to accelerate this conversation.
All right. So
Good.
Peter, do you want to go next? And then we'll come back to Marty.
No,
Which-
no.
what-
No, I'll be glad to, because
Okay.
I'll go real quickly. It's interesting to me to step back and look at the big picture, which we don't ever get to do. What we're doing here every time is important things, like budget in and out and financial pictures, and then the HR, we're hiring teachers and so on and all that kind of thing. But to step back and actually look at what we're doing is a real pleasure. And I just don't think we get to do that enough. And I'm wondering how the Academic Senate gets to do that, because they signed up for Academic Senate not because they like to look at what we send to them or what everybody sends to them, but probably because they'd like to talk about how the college is heading. And they have a big role in that. And same with the classified too, because, they have a role in how this college is heading, but how do you get the big picture? So, it's a struggle, I know. And I guess I was thinking about that bulletin idea, and I think it's kind of a good idea, as long as we don't react to it, except here. But I love to read what you put on there, Peter. I don't think it's too long. And if it's too long, you just sort of skim it, But no, it's, I think the articles are all very good. So that's kind of an interesting thing, but we have to be careful, of course, on that. But I think stepping back and looking at the big picture is something we ought to all be doing every once in a while. However we could do that.
Peter?
Yeah, I like the survey. I didn't like the length.
Yeah.
I thought there were times when it was repetitive, and I found myself having to say, I've already said it. I missed the scale, and I'd like to see the scale reinserted, because the comparison between what people actually say and where they put the dot on the scale could be a very interesting comparison. Because with that, we are able to look at the aggregate, at the whole of us, and that may be helpful. So I'd like to put that forward for next year. The theme that I found that really intrigued me was the theme of communicating with the community. And that was included in a number of different questions, or at least the responses. But it occurs to me that might generate a conversation about, what is the community? Who constitutes the community? I mean, there are perhaps a half a dozen very loud members of the community that I hear from all the time, but that's not the community. Does the community want to be communicated with? Is I think, a legitimate question. And that goes beyond what we do. I think it sort of mimics what the entire American polity looks like. I mean, we're keen on the 10-second soundbite, and we glaze over when somebody comes to us and tries to explain a policy issue in some depth. So I think that needs to be somehow raised up and said. I sometimes get concerned about some of the things that are written by the community about us, and I know it's sort of de rigueur to begin with a vilification of the adversary, but I would like us to communicate with the community that isn't necessarily an essential component of communicating with us. But I appreciate the focus on community, because it does give rise to these other questions. Who are we communicating with? Who does the communicating? And to what end? So that I have more questions than I have answers.
Jonathan?
Well, first, I'd like to say that I thought that this worked out pretty nicely, and we have some, I think you can, like Peter said, glance some themes that came out from our answers that, we didn't agree at every point, but you can tell which direction the board as a whole is feeling through this because of how, it was a little lengthy, and when I started doing it, it was a little long, but that's because we didn't change the questions, we just changed the method. So I think next time we just change the questions with this method, maybe add in the rankings again, but keep the need to answer every question like this. Could work really nicely, especially next year. The two questions that I just want to highlight were, first, question 31, the last one, which is us engaging with the community in a structured manner, which was one of our goals that I felt that we didn't complete. But my suggestion on how we can better complete it would be to work, like each trustee host some sort, or work with the college to host a community engagement forum in each of our areas so that they could be, I don't know, each trustee could probably want to do it differently. Like one could be informational on the budget, one could be more based on what services we offer, one could be, it could be a series of things, but I think we do need to have a structured plan on how we want to, as board members, engage with the community, because that was our goal, and I felt like we didn't do anything concrete or tangible to meet it. One thing that I had in mind, I had brought up once, was having like a community relations note or agenda item at every other board meeting, like once a month. I guess we don't have the study sessions, but whatever meeting we choose it would be. But that could be a chance where you could share as a board members, through my community engagement the past month, I've heard this recurring theme. Not like this one person told me X, because that's not our problem. That's not our board level issue, but we could say I've heard overall that people are feeling X way. So that's the first one. And my second question I want to highlight is question 18. Let me get to it so I can read a note. It's about the budget. Okay, sorry, my scrolling is going very slowly on my computer. So the question was, what is our engagement, community engagement with the budget? And I don't have any concrete ideas to share, but at a conference I was at last month, it was a Young Elected Officials Conference, there was a lot of people who are on school boards across the country and in California a great deal. And in one of our sessions, a lot of the other officials mentioned that they engage in something like a community visioning process for the budget, like 5 years out. And I know that kind of came up in our CEO interviews as well. So I think that's something we could look to incorporate into our next budget timeline. I have no actual ideas on how that would happen. I'm still trying to research and come up how that would work so I can present something meaningful, but it's just an idea of how we can include community vision in setting our budget in the long term.
Okay. Other thoughts or comments?
No, I mean, I like that. I think that ties in nicely with, we're saying like, emerging educational needs, we take it from high to okay, then locally, and what can our budget do to support that further supports the mission and kind of, yeah. That's good.
I mean, one of the things that strikes me about our comments here is that we have both said that we like the chance to step back and look at the big picture and hear what we each think. And I think at the same time, there's a flip side to that, which we, community listening from their side, what's the big picture and what do they think? So I think we've got those two sides of that coin going on in these comments, and that's something as we go forward we can think about for our goals. I saw a theme where there were a number of responses relating to the budget, and I just wanted to update you guys that I have talked to Anthony about some scheduling issues, and it looks like our retreat on August 9th will include some significant amount of budget, both training and discussion. And I think that'll be timely as well as we move into the final budget process. So we're looking at a question, at something that would be both give us a statewide perspective, maybe somebody from the Chancellor's office come down and talk with us as well, and then, our local perspective as well. So that looks like the 9th from his perspective. And, obviously there's other things as well that we may want to address in the retreat.
So are we thinking of a full-day retreat or a half-day or?
I didn't ask that question, but I'm thinking full. I think there's more than enough to talk about, and lunch, so.
Good.
Okay. I have to go back and find out where we were.
5.1,
Yes.
consent.
5.1, this is Joe, Financial Aid Media Campaign Program.
The Business Services Consent Agenda item, 5.1, is the Financial Aid Media Campaign Program Managers and Contracts Agreement. This is something that we've managed for the Chancellor's Office now for several years. I think you've all seen it, hopefully are familiar with it. It's strictly a pass-through. We are the fiscal agent, basically, for the contract.
Okay. Motion?
So move.
Peter moves. Second?
Second.
Mary Ann, second. And any comments or questions? Craig?
As I look through this, and this time, I try to read everything every time. I've read through all of that stuff, which I think is more than we had the last time this was passed through to us to approve. And now we have this new communications plan that we're going to try to implement. And probably this year is too soon to do anything, but maybe for next year, staff could look at how this could work together with our communications plan.
It's totally separate, Craig.
I know the funding is, but.
No, it's not even, this is related to financial aid and getting the word out statewide to our 2.1 million students about state financial aid
realize that.
programs. It has nothing to do with local, and so the Chancellor's Office cannot run those contracts. So they look for a fiscal agent in the state, another district, to run them. So this is simply approving an award from the Chancellor's Office to accept money and then expend that money by hiring consultants.
I understand that.
And the program director to run the program. It's
I do.
financial aid for students.
I do understand that.
Okay.
And then, but maybe I'm way out in left field here, but it's not because I don't understand what you said. I do. The foundation has given us the Promise program. And it seems to me we're talking to the same audience, at least in part. The audience is overlapping. So what I'm suggesting is that our communications, community relations people, managers, look at these programs and fully understand, okay, we're saying this over here, and let's make sure the message is unified, and it doesn't start to conflict. And I see the potential for that. I'm sure that we have staff plenty bright enough not to let that occur, but it was just a concern to me.
Yeah, there isn't conflict, trust me on that. This is managed by financial aid directors around the state.
Okay.
Can you just hear it now? The rumor is that we're now having 2.3 million students. I mean, imagine what the Mesa Association would want to do with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd suggest you not start that rumor, Peter.
Don't start that rumor.
I will.
Oh, boy.
Untrue.
I need
Okay, Mary Ann?
I'm glad you brought this up, because I am concerned that we be very careful how we explain the Promise program. And I appreciated the script that we received on the components of that program, because I've had several people come talk with me about it who clearly had picked rumors up from somewhere and were off base, but were telling other people what they thought they knew. And things like the Promise program are very often things that can be miscommunicated. And then our people here at the college have to spend their time cleaning up the communications. So I mentioned it for you all and me, but also for all of us to be really careful how we communicate this. It sounds so good that people jump in without maybe really listening. So thank you, Craig.
Well, it is good, and I've had people ask if they've heard about it, or they come to me and they said they heard about it,
Yeah.
and they did not have it right. I haven't had one yet that got it right. So, we need to really look at that message that we're sending out there, but at least the message is going out.
Yeah.
The message is going out. So that's why I brought up that, is it's all got to be synchronized somehow.
Okay. Well, I think we're ready to vote, so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's it, Joe.
Thank you.
And we now adjourn to a closed session, and we'll return after that.
I like the idea of community forums, always have, always been
I actually got up at about 8
reluctance based on